now stands at more than 1,200, but it will rise. One regional official says the deaths in his area alone will undoubtedly be in the tens of thousands. 200,000 people living near a nuclear power plant in Fukushima have been evacuated. There was an explosion at one reactor on Saturday. There are fears there could be another explosion in a different reactor at the same plant. The world is trying to help out. The USS Ronald Reagan arrived off the coast on Sunday and has made dozens of trips delivering aid. Meanwhile, more video is emerging of the sheer scale of what's hit Japan. Just take a look at this. In a moment, we'll go live to Japan. But first, here's my take. There have been many ways to try to make sense of the tsunami in Japan. Many analogies from history. The simplest for me is if you take the earthquake that hit New Zealand a few weeks ago and multiplied it by 1,000, you would get the one that hit Japan. Or if you remember the one that devastated Haiti last year, this one is several hundred times more powerful. That's why, despite all the precautions and preparedness, the devastation has been so great. In fact, most experts agree that in terms of safety plans and procedures, Japan has done almost everything right. It's too soon to draw any important lessons here. It's too soon to do anything but mourn. But this tragedy does remind us, no matter how much advanced work a country does, no matter how well the buildings are built, nothing can prepare you for this. But the work has helped. The death toll in Japan would be much, much worse, if not for all the safety codes and drills that they had adopted. Even in their nuclear power plants, things could have gotten much, much worse. The one area where Japan did not adequately prepare itself was economics. Japan has not managed its economy with the awareness that it might suffer from earthquakes and thus needs room to be able to take on the large-scale debt that rebuilding its economy will take. Quite to the contrary, Japan has a debt load that is almost twice the size of its total GDP, the worst of all rich countries. The IMF says that in 4 years, Japan's debt will hit 250% of GDP. And that's before this earthquake that will add tens and tens of billions of dollars to the tab. While no one can ever prepare for a tsunami like this, we all do need to keep our eyes on worst-case scenarios. Natural disasters, wars, financial meltdowns, all can happen. And we should keep that in mind in managing our lives, our companies, our countries. We need to give ourselves enough flexibility and resilience to be able to handle such crises. Japan did not do that in the economic case. But isn't it time for us to start worrying about whether we in the United States have done that? Or will we wait till the next crisis hits, till the next earthquake? Okay, let's go to our report. TSUNAMI is monitoring the search and rescue operation in Sendai, but let's kick off with Stan Grant in Tokyo. Stan, what is the worst-case scenario with the nuclear power plants?
You know, Farouk used this word worst-case scenario. They're actually living it out right now. This is worse than they ever would have expected or hoped for. You know, there are two words you do not want to hear associated with a nuclear power plant, and one of those words is meltdown, the other is catastrophe. Well, the word meltdown is being used. If you listen to what the Nuclear Safety Agency has been saying, they are working on two assumptions. One assumption is that in one of the reactors there is a high possibility of a meltdown. The other assumption is of another possibility, a lower possibility of a meltdown in that third reactor. So two reactors affected there. What are they doing about it? Well, they're pumping more seawater into them to try to get the water level up to cool the reactor. So far, that hasn't been working. Now, at the same time, radiation is being detected in the atmosphere. The government says not to a degree that's going to harm people, but they have cleared the people out, as you mentioned. 200,000 people have been pushed out of that area, evacuated from their homes, a 20-kilometre, 12 or 13-mile exclusion zone established there. All of this to avert that other word, catastrophe. That's what they want to be able to avert. They're hoping that they're able to cool this system, and they're hoping that all these fail-safe procedures, the backup procedures they do have in case of things actually get worse, that they actually kick in and save the day. But right now, it's a race against time. That's how it's been described, and it's fair to say they haven't been winning that race. The reactors continue to heat through.
Stan, is it fair to say, though, that because radiation levels do not seem to be that high, that even in this worst-case scenario, it does not appear that people's lives are in danger in the surrounding areas?
Exactly. At this point, the government has stressed that the levels have not been high enough to cause harm. People have been affected, though. You're talking about more than 100 people so far who have come into contact with some radiation, and they're being tested to see just how much. Iodine is being handed out to people to guard against the impact of any radiation if people do come into contact with it. But you're right, at this stage the levels are not that high. And if you look at the nuclear reactor itself and you talk about a meltdown, look at the two extremes here. You have Chernobyl on the one hand, where there's a meltdown, an explosion and radiation poured into the atmosphere. At least 50 people we know are directly killed from that. At the other extreme, 3 Mile Island in the United States, there a meltdown as well, but it was contained, and that's what they'd be hoping for here. If there is indeed a meltdown, if it does get worse, what they're hoping for are these backup procedures, these redundancy safety procedures actually kick in. If something fails, something else kicks in and stops it getting worse, and that they're able to contain it. That's really what they're working for it.
Thank you, Stan. That's what we're hoping for. No matter how spectacular the story, we're hoping that the human damage is limited, which seems to be the case. We will be back right after this.
The best in Smart Sunday Talk. For Eat's sake. Brought to you by Audi, Truth in Engineering.